The blood-red sun dipped below the jagged horizon as Nora Sullivan trudged along the dusty trail, her threadbare traveling dress clinging to her slender frame in the unrelenting heat of the Arizona Territory. The year was 1879, and the last drops of her hope were evaporating faster than the morning dew. She had nothing left, no family, no money, and only a name scratched on a worn piece of paper: Garrison, Arizona. Nora's boots were worn thin, her once white gloves now gray with the dust of 100 miles. The stagecoach had dropped her 10 miles back after she could no longer afford passage. At 22, she had buried her parents, lost their farm to debt, and fled east with only the promise of a teaching position that might or might not be waiting for her. As twilight deepened, the distant glow of lanterns promised civilization ahead. Garrison wasn't much a small settlement that had sprung up around a silver mine, but to Nora, it represented her last chance. She quickened her pace, ignoring the blisters that had formed and burst hours ago. The main street appeared before her, a single dirt road lined with wooden buildings. A saloon erupted with raucous laughter, the sound of a tinny piano drifting through its swinging doors. A general store, now closed for the evening, displayed goods behind dusty windows. At the far end stood a whitewashed church, small but sturdy against the darkening sky. Nora's stomach clenched with hunger as she approached the only establishment still showing signs of life besides the saloon, a small boarding house with a painted sign reading, "Mrs. Holloway's." Light spilled from its windows, and the faint smell of cooking drifted on the evening air. She hesitated at the door, conscious of her disheveled appearance and empty purse. Pride whispered for her to turn away, but necessity won out. With a trembling hand, she knocked. The door swung open to reveal a portly woman with graying hair pulled into a severe bun. She looked Nora up and down, her expression shifting from irritation to something softer. "Yes," the woman asked, her voice gruff but not unkind. "I'm looking for Mrs. Holloway," Nora said, summoning what little strength remained in her voice. "I'm Nora Sullivan. I've come about the teaching position." The woman's eyebrows rose. "Teaching position? That was advertised 3 months ago, girl. We hired someone else, but she left after 2 weeks, said the place was too rough." She shook her head. "I'm Mrs. Holloway, and I run the boarding house and serve on the town council. We've been without a teacher since." Hope flickered in Nora's chest. "Then the position is still available?" Mrs. Holloway sighed. "It is, but—" She paused, noting how Nora swayed slightly on her feet. "Good heavens, when was the last time you ate, child?" "Yesterday morning," Nora admitted, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Come in, come in." Mrs. Holloway stepped aside. "We can discuss the position after you've had something in your stomach." The boarding house was modest but clean, with a small dining room where 2 men sat finishing their meals. They glanced up as Nora entered, then quickly returned to their plates. "Sit," Mrs. Holloway ordered, pointing to an empty chair. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned moments later with a bowl of stew and a thick slice of bread. "Eat." Nora didn't need to be told twice. She tried to maintain some semblance of decorum, but hunger won out, and she devoured the food with barely contained desperation. "The teaching position pays $15 a month," Mrs. Holloway explained as Nora ate. "Room and board included. You'd stay here and teach at the schoolhouse across from the church. We've got 12 children of various ages." Nora nodded, relief washing over her. It wasn't much, but it was something. A start. "I'm qualified," she said between bites. "I completed 2 years at the women's seminary in Boston before my parents fell ill." Mrs. Holloway studied her. "This isn't Boston, Miss Sullivan. Garrison is rough around the edges. Most of these children have never seen a book outside of the Bible. Their parents are miners, ranchers, and shopkeepers who need help just to write a letter." "I understand," Nora said, though in truth, she had no idea what she was agreeing to. "I can start immediately." "We'll need the town council's approval, but that's just a formality at this point. We're desperate for someone who can read and write proper English." Mrs. Holloway gathered Nora's empty dishes. "Finish your tea, then I'll show you to your room. You look dead on your feet." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small dresser. Nora barely registered these details before exhaustion claimed her. She fell asleep fully clothed, her last thought a prayer of gratitude for finding shelter. Morning arrived with the crowing of a rooster and the sound of voices from below. Nora washed quickly in the basin, did her best to smooth the wrinkles from her traveling dress, and pinned her auburn hair into a simple but neat arrangement. She had one other dress in her carpet bag, equally worn but cleaner. She would have to make do until she received her first month's wages. Mrs. Holloway was serving breakfast to 4 boarders when Nora descended the stairs. "Ah, Miss Sullivan, come meet some of our residents." The introductions passed in a blur. Mr. Peterson, who ran the general store, Mr. Fowler, who worked at the assay office, and 2 brothers named Simmons, who were employed at the silver mine. All regarded her with polite curiosity, and Nora felt a flush rising to her cheeks under their scrutiny. "Miss Sullivan is our new schoolteacher," Mrs. Holloway announced. "Or will be once the council approves, which they will because school should have started 2 weeks ago." After breakfast, Mrs. Holloway led Nora to the small schoolhouse. It was a simple structure with rough-hewn benches, a battered teacher's desk, and a blackboard that had seen better days. A shelf held a meager collection of books, mostly primers, a few Bibles, and a tattered copy of McGuffey's Reader. "It's not much, Mrs. Holloway admitted, "but it's what we have. The children will bring their own slates and chalk." Nora ran her fingers along the desk, her mind already forming plans. "It will do nicely," she said with more confidence than she felt. They spent the morning preparing the schoolhouse and visiting the homes of several families with school-aged children, spreading word that classes would begin the following day. By afternoon, Nora had met most of her future pupils, a mix of shy, curious, and openly defiant faces. As they walked back toward the boarding house, the sound of hammering drew their attention to the building next to the general store. A man stood on a ladder, securing a new sign above the doorway. "That's Quinn Blackwood's place," Mrs. Holloway explained. "He runs the stables and does smithing work. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's reliable. His brother Wyatt is the town marshal." Nora glanced at the man on the ladder. All she could see was a broad back in a blue work shirt and the shadow of a hat brim. As if sensing her gaze, he turned slightly, revealing a profile of strong features partially obscured by several days' growth of beard. "Come along," Mrs. Holloway urged. "The council meets at 4, and you'll need to freshen up." The town council consisted of 5 members: Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Peterson from the general store, the saloon owner Mr. Donovan, the mine foreman Mr. Kincaid, and Mayor Wilcox, who also served as the town's doctor. They gathered in a small room behind the marshal's office, and Nora stood before them, answering questions about her qualifications and experience. "Well, Miss Sullivan," Mayor Wilcox said after the brief interview, "it seems you're exactly what Garrison needs. The position is yours if you want it." "Thank you, sir," Nora replied, relief evident in her voice. "I won't disappoint you," as she exited the marshal's office with Mrs. Holloway. Nora nearly collided with a tall figure entering through the doorway. "Pardon me, madam," came a deep voice as strong hands steadied her shoulders. Nora looked up into the face of the man she had seen working on the sign earlier. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin. His hat was pushed back, revealing dark hair in need of a trim. "Miss Sullivan, this is Quinn Blackwood," Mrs. Holloway said. "Quinn, this is Nora Sullivan, our new school teacher." "Madam." Quinn tipped his hat, his expression unreadable. "Welcome to Garrison." "Thank you," Nora managed, suddenly aware of the sorry state of her dress and the wisps of hair that had escaped her pins during the day's activities. "Quinn's brother should be back from Tucson tomorrow, Mrs. Holloway explained. "Quinn's filling in as deputy until then." Quinn nodded. "Just checking in before I make evening rounds. His gaze lingered on Nora for a moment longer than necessary before he stepped past them into the office. "Don't mind him," Mrs. Holloway said as they walked away. "He's not much for conversation, but he's a good man. Lost his wife and daughter to fever 5 years back. Hasn't been the same since." Nora glanced over her shoulder at the marshal's office, a strange tightness in her chest. She recognized the look in Quinn Blackwood's eyes. It was the same hollow expression she had seen in her own reflection after burying her parents. The next morning, Nora stood nervously before her 12 pupils, ranging in age from 6 to 16. Some wore clean clothes and eager expressions. Others looked as though they'd been dragged there against their will. One boy in particular, about 14 with sandy hair and a defiant tilt to his chin, slouched in the back row, emanating resistance. "Good morning," Nora began, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I am Miss Sullivan, and I'll be your teacher. I'd like to begin by learning your names." The introductions went smoothly until she reached the sullen boy. "And you are," she prompted. "Tyler Blackwood," he muttered. "And I ain't staying. Pa said I only had to come the first day." Nora's heart sank. The boy was clearly related to Quinn Blackwood. They shared the same blue eyes and stubborn set to the jaw. "Well, Tyler, I'm pleased you came today. Perhaps you'll find our lessons interesting enough to return tomorrow." The boy snorted, but said nothing more. The day was challenging. Nora discovered that half her students could barely read, and none had progressed beyond basic arithmetic. The older girls seemed interested primarily in when they might find husbands, while several of the boys clearly believed their futures lay in the mine or on ranches, with no need for book learning. By the end of the day, Nora's throat was raw from speaking, and her patience had been tested repeatedly. As the children filed out, Tyler Blackwood made a point of declaring, "Told you I ain't coming back," before stomping away. Nora sank into her chair, fighting back tears of frustration. She had known it wouldn't be easy, but the reality was harsher than she had anticipated. Rough first day? She looked up to find Quinn Blackwood standing in the doorway, his broad shoulders nearly filling the frame. She hadn't heard him approach. "Mr. Blackwood." Nora straightened, determined not to show weakness. "Yes, challenging but not unexpected." He stepped inside, removing his hat. "I came to apologize for my nephew's behavior. His father, my brother, spoils the boy." "Tyler made it clear he won't be returning," Nora said. Quinn's expression hardened. "He'll be here tomorrow. I'll see to it myself." "I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Blackwood, but forcing him will only make him more resistant." "Maybe so, but Wyatt and I agreed when Emma died that the boy would get an education." His voice softened slightly. "Emma was my sister-in-law. She taught Tyler his letters before the fever took her. He's forgotten that, but I haven't." Nora studied him, seeing beyond the rough exterior to the pain beneath. "I understand. Perhaps we can find a way to engage him to make him want to learn." Quinn shrugged. "That's your department, Miss Sullivan. I just swing hammers and shoe horses." He replaced his hat. "Either way, he'll be here tomorrow." True to Quinn's word, Tyler appeared the next morning, his expression thunderous. He slumped into his seat without looking at Nora, but at least he was present. The rest of the week followed a similar pattern. Tyler would arrive late, participate minimally, and leave the moment class was dismissed. On Friday afternoon, as Nora was cleaning the blackboard, she heard boots on the wooden steps. Expecting Mrs. Holloway, who often checked in after school, she was surprised to find Quinn Blackwood once again at the door. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged. "If you're checking on Tyler, he left the moment I dismissed class." "Actually," Quinn said, seeming uncharacteristically hesitant, "I came to ask a favor." Nora set down the eraser. "A favor? My brother's back in town, but he's heading out again tomorrow. Cattle rustlers causing trouble north of here." Quinn twisted his hat in his hands. "Tyler needs looking after when Wyatt's away. Usually stays with me at the stables, but you'd prefer he spent his time doing something productive," Nora finished for him. "Something like that. I was hoping you might have use for him after school." "He's good with his hands," could fix things around here. Quinn gestured to the sagging shelves and the window that wouldn't close properly. Nora considered the offer. Having Tyler help around the schoolhouse might give her a chance to connect with him, to understand his resistance to learning. "I'd be happy to have his assistance," she said, "but he may not be so willing." Quinn's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Leave that to me." Monday afternoon found Tyler Blackwood grudgingly remaining after class, his uncle's instructions clearly weighing on him. "So," Nora said brightly, "shall we start with the shelves or the window?" Tyler shrugged. "Don't matter." "The shelves, then." Nora pointed to the sagging bookcase. "They need reinforcing before they collapse entirely." For the next hour, Tyler worked silently, measuring and cutting wood from scraps Quinn had provided. Nora marked papers at her desk, occasionally glancing up to observe his progress. Despite his attitude, the boy was skilled, his movements precise and confident. "You're very good at that," she commented as he finished securing the brackets he had fashioned. Tyler's ears reddened slightly at the praise. "Uncle Quinn taught me. He says a man should know how to work with his hands." "Your uncle is right," Nora agreed, "but he also believes a man should know how to work with his mind. That's why he wants you in school." Tyler's expression closed off again. "Book learning's for folks who can't do real work." "Is that what you think?" Nora set down her pen. "Tell me, how did you know to measure twice before cutting that wood?" "Everyone knows that," Tyler mumbled. "And how did you calculate the angle for those brackets?" The boy frowned. "I just knew." "That's mathematics, Tyler. The same mathematics we're studying in class." Nora stood and moved to inspect his work. "Knowledge isn't separate from real work, as you call it. It enhances it." Tyler seemed to consider this, his defiant expression softening slightly. "I still don't see why I need to know about dead presidents and foreign countries." "Perhaps not," Nora conceded, "but wouldn't you like to read adventure stories about explorers and frontiersmen, or understand how steam engines work, or know enough figures to ensure you're never cheated in business?" A flicker of interest crossed Tyler's face before he masked it. "Maybe," he allowed reluctantly. It was a small victory, but Nora counted it as progress. Over the next 2 weeks, a routine developed. Tyler would attend class with minimal participation, then stay afterward to work on various repairs around the schoolhouse. During these times, Nora would engage him in conversation, drawing him out bit by bit, connecting his practical skills to the subjects she taught. Quinn appeared occasionally to check on Tyler's progress, his visits becoming more frequent as the days passed. Nora found herself looking forward to these brief encounters, to the quiet nod of approval he would give upon seeing his nephew's work, to the rare moments when his stoic expression would soften into something almost like a smile. One afternoon, as Tyler worked on constructing a cabinet for school supplies, Quinn arrived with an armload of wood. "Thought you might need more materials," he explained, setting the planks down near Tyler's workstation. "Thank you," Nora said. "Tyler's work has been invaluable." "The schoolhouse is in better shape than it's been in years." Quinn nodded, watching his nephew measure a piece of wood. "He says you've been teaching him about mechanical drawings." "Yes, I thought it might interest him. He has a natural aptitude for spatial reasoning." A hint of pride crossed Quinn's features. His father was the same way, could look at a broken wagon wheel and know exactly how to fix it without being told. Nora smiled. "Tyler mentioned you're teaching him blacksmithing as well." "Trying to," Quinn confirmed. "Boy needs to learn a trade." They stood in companionable silence, watching Tyler work. Nora was acutely aware of Quinn's presence beside her, of the clean scent of soap that mingled with leather and wood smoke. "Miss Sullivan," Quinn said suddenly, his voice low, "would you allow me to escort you to the Founders' Day celebration this Saturday? The whole town attends." The invitation caught Nora off guard. Since arriving in Garrison, she had focused solely on establishing herself as the schoolteacher, on earning the respect of the townspeople. The possibility of social engagements hadn't crossed her mind. "That would be lovely, Mr. Blackwood," she managed, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Quinn's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes lightened. "I'll call for you at 6, then." As he turned to leave, Tyler looked up from his work with a puzzled expression, glancing between his uncle and his teacher. Nora felt her cheeks flush under the boy's scrutiny, but she returned to her desk with as much dignity as she could muster, ignoring the knowing smirk that had appeared on Tyler's face. Saturday arrived clear and warm, with a festive atmosphere pervading the town. Bunting decorated the storefronts, and a platform had been erected in the town square for dancing. Nora spent the day in a state of nervous anticipation, alternating between excitement and doubt. She had only one good dress, a navy blue cotton with white trim that she had carefully preserved for special occasions. It was modest and somewhat outdated by Eastern standards, but it was the best she had. Mrs. Holloway, sensing her anxiety, offered the use of a cameo brooch to adorn the collar. "You look lovely," the older woman assured her as Nora pinned her hair into a more elaborate style than her usual simple arrangement. "Quinn Blackwood won't know what hit him." "It's merely a neighborly escort," Nora protested, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. Mrs. Holloway's knowing smile said she wasn't fooled. "Quinn hasn't escorted anyone anywhere since his wife passed. Neighborly or not, it means something." At precisely 6 o'clock, a knock sounded at the boarding house door. Nora descended the stairs to find Quinn Blackwood standing in the foyer, hat in hand, dressed in clean dark trousers and a pressed white shirt. His hair was neatly trimmed, his face freshly shaved, revealing a strong jaw and features that were more handsome than Nora had realized. "Miss Sullivan," he greeted her, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her appearance. "Mr. Blackwood." Nora felt suddenly shy under his gaze. Mrs. Holloway bustled forward with Nora's shawl. "Don't keep her out too late, Quinn," she instructed, though her tone was teasing. "And mind you bring her back in the same condition she left." Quinn's ears reddened slightly, but he nodded solemnly. "Yes, madam." The town square was alive with music and laughter when they arrived. Lanterns hung from wires strung between buildings, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Children darted between groups of adults, their faces sticky with candy. The scent of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air from the long tables set up by the church ladies. Quinn offered his arm, and Nora placed her hand in the crook of his elbow, intensely aware of the solid strength beneath her fingertips. "I should warn you," he said as they approached the crowd. "People will talk." "People always talk in small towns," Nora replied with a small smile. "I learned that growing up in one." "Where was that?" Quinn asked, and Nora realized how little they knew about each other beyond their current circumstances. "A small farming community in Pennsylvania," she answered. "Not much different from Garrison, except for the mountains and the heat." Quinn guided her through the crowd, nodding to acquaintances. Several people cast curious glances their way, and Nora heard whispers follow in their wake. She lifted her chin, determined not to show discomfort. "Are you hungry?" Quinn asked, steering them toward the food tables. "Starving," Nora admitted with a laugh. "I was too nervous to eat much today." Quinn's eyes warmed. "Nervous? About being seen with the town blacksmith? About being seen with the most intimidating man in Garrison," she corrected him lightly. "Half my students are still afraid to look you in the eye when you walk past the schoolhouse." A hint of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Only half. I'm losing my touch." They filled plates with roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread, then found seats at one of the long tables. As they ate, Quinn gradually opened up, telling her about growing up on a ranch near Tucson with his brother Wyatt, about learning blacksmithing from his father, about his dreams of expanding his business to include wagon making. Nora, in turn, shared stories of her childhood, of teaching her younger siblings before they succumbed to scarlet fever, of her parents' determination to send her to the seminary despite their limited means. "They would have liked to see me here," she said softly. My father always said education was the greatest gift he could give his children. He was right, Quinn agreed, his expression thoughtful. It's why I push Tyler so hard. His father, my brother, he's a good man, but he doesn't see beyond the next cattle drive or the next lawbreaker. I want more for Tyler. The band struck up a lively tune, and couples began to fill the dancing platform. Quinn watched them for a moment, then turned to Nora. Would you care to dance, Miss Sullivan? Nora hesitated. I should warn you, I'm not very practiced. The seminary frowned on dancing. That makes two of us, Quinn said, rising and offering his hand. But I'm willing if you are. The dance was a simple reel, and despite their mutual claims of inexperience, they managed creditably. Quinn's hand at her waist was firm but gentle, guiding her through the turns with surprising grace for such a large man. When the music shifted to a slower waltz, he drew her closer, and Nora felt the heat of his palm through the fabric of her dress. People are watching, she murmured, acutely aware of the eyes upon them. Let them, Quinn replied, his voice low near her ear. I'm not concerned with what they think. As they moved in time to the music, something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of the attraction that had been building since their first meeting. Nora felt it in the way Quinn's hand tightened slightly at her waist, in the way his eyes never left her face. When the dance ended, he did not immediately release her. Would you like to walk? He asked. It's getting crowded here. Nora nodded, and they slipped away from the main celebration, strolling toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open country. The night was clear, stars brilliant in the vast expanse above them, the music and laughter from the square growing fainter with each step. They stopped near a large cottonwood tree, its leaves rustling gently in the evening breeze. Quinn turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. Nora, he said, using her given name for the first time. I'm not good with words, never have been, but I want you to know that I admire you, your courage in coming here alone, your patience with the children, even that stubborn nephew of mine. Nora's heart quickened. Thank you, she whispered. Quinn took a step closer. I haven't felt this way about anyone since I lost my wife. Didn't think I could. He hesitated, searching her face. I know it's too soon to speak of such things, but I wanted you to understand that my intentions are honorable. Quinn, Nora began, but words failed her. Instead, she reached up and touched his cheek, feeling the slight roughness of stubble beneath her fingertips. He caught her hand, turning it to press a kiss to her palm. The gesture, so unexpected and tender, brought tears to Nora's eyes. You're trembling, Quinn observed, concern in his voice. I'm not afraid, she assured him. Just overwhelmed. I came to Garrison with nothing but hope and determination I never expected to find. She trailed off, unable to articulate the feelings swelling in her chest. Someone who sees you, Quinn suggested softly. Nora nodded, a single tear escaping to trail down her cheek. Quinn brushed it away with his thumb, his touch infinitely gentle. No one's ever looked at me the way you do, she confessed in a whisper. Quinn's expression softened, his eyes reflecting the starlight. No one's ever called me beautiful, Nora continued, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Then they've never looked, the cowboy said simply, as if stating an obvious truth. The moment hung between them, fragile and perfect. Then slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, Quinn lowered his head and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so tender it made her heart ache. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and Nora responded by winding her arms around his neck, surrendering to the feelings she had been trying to deny. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. We should head back, he said reluctantly. Before Mrs. Holloway sends out a search party, Nora laughed softly, feeling lighter than she had in years. Yes, I suppose we should. They walked back toward town hand in hand, the celebration still in full swing. As they approached the square, Quinn slowed his steps. Would you allow me to call on you properly? Sunday after church, perhaps? I would like that very much, Nora replied, warmth spreading through her at the thought. The days that followed took on a golden quality for Nora. Each morning brought the challenge and reward of teaching. Each afternoon, the satisfaction of seeing Tyler's gradual transformation from reluctant student to engaged learner. And each evening, the anticipation of Quinn's visits. True to his word, Quinn called on her the Sunday after the Founders' Day celebration, arriving at the boarding house dressed in his Sunday best, hat in hand. Mrs. Holloway ushered him into the small parlor with a knowing smile, then disappeared to give them privacy while remaining within proper chaperoning distance. Their courtship progressed with careful propriety that nonetheless couldn't disguise the deepening connection between them. Quinn would escort Nora on walks through town or on gentle rides into the surrounding countryside on his placid mare. They talked of everything and nothing: books she had read, horses he had trained, dreams they had harbored and lost and found again. As autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures to the desert, Nora's position in Garrison solidified. The parents of her students had come to respect her methods, even those who had initially been skeptical of the Eastern schoolmarm. Enrollment had increased to 15 children, and the town council had approved funds for new books and supplies. Tyler Blackwood had undergone perhaps the most remarkable transformation. From sullen resistance, he had moved to grudging participation and finally to genuine engagement. His natural intelligence, once channeled, proved exceptional, particularly in mathematics and mechanical drawing. He could be an engineer, Nora told Quinn one evening as they sat on the boarding house porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. With the proper education, there's no limit to what he could achieve. Quinn nodded, pride evident in his expression. Wyatt's noticed the change in him, asked me yesterday what I'd done to his son. He reached for Nora's hand, entwining his fingers with hers. I told him it wasn't me, it was you. Nora felt a blush rise to her cheeks. It was Tyler himself. He just needed someone to believe in him. Like you believed in me, Quinn said quietly. When everyone else in town saw a broken man who'd never moved beyond his grief, you saw something more. I saw a man with a heart so big he raised his brother's son as his own, Nora replied. A man who rebuilds rather than destroys, who creates beauty from raw metal and wood. Quinn's eyes darkened with emotion. He lifted her hand to his lips. Nora Sullivan, you have brought light back into my life when I thought I would live in shadow forever. The declaration, so simple and heartfelt, brought tears to her eyes. And you've given me a home when I thought I would never belong anywhere again. In that moment, with the desert stretching before them and the first stars appearing in the darkening sky, Nora knew with certainty that she had found where she was meant to be. The following morning, a commotion in the schoolyard drew Nora from her preparations. She stepped outside to find several of her students gathered around Tyler, who was facing off against 3 rough-looking men on horseback. I said my pa ain't here, Tyler was saying, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his stance. He's tracking rustlers up north. You'll have to take your business elsewhere. The leader of the trio, a barrel-chested man with a scar bisecting his left cheek, leaned forward in his saddle. That's mighty inconvenient, boy. We rode a long way to discuss some unfinished business with Marshal Blackwood. Nora moved swiftly to Tyler's side. Gentlemen, this is a school. If you have business with the marshal, I suggest you take it to his office. The scarred man's gaze shifted to Nora, his expression changing from irritation to something that made her skin crawl. Well. Didn't know Garrison had such pretty school teachers. He touched the brim of his hat in a mocking salute. Madam, the marshal's office is down the street, Nora repeated firmly, placing a protective hand on Tyler's shoulder. And school is in session. I must ask you to leave. The man's eyes hardened. We'll go when we're good and ready, madam, and right now, I'm thinking we might just wait here for the marshal's brother. I hear he's been keeping company with a certain schoolteacher. That would be you, I reckon. Tyler tensed beneath Nora's hand. Leave her alone, Decker, he growled, and Nora realized with a chill that the boy knew these men. Tyler, she said quietly, take the other children inside, now. For once, Tyler didn't argue. He herded the younger students toward the schoolhouse, though he himself remained on the steps, clearly unwilling to leave Nora alone. What business do you have with Mr. Blackwood? Nora asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Decker smiled, revealing a gold tooth. Personal business, madam. Very personal. You see, Quinn Blackwood killed my brother 2 years ago, claimed it was self-defense, but I know better. He spat into the dust. I aim to settle the score. Fear clenched around Nora's heart, but she refused to show it. If you have a grievance, take it to the proper authorities. This is a civilized town. The men laughed, the sound harsh in the morning air. Civilized? Lady, this is the Arizona Territory. The only law that matters out here is the law of vengeance. The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted the confrontation. Quinn appeared on his black gelding, his expression thunderous as he took in the scene. Behind him rode his brother Wyatt, the marshal's badge glinting on his chest. Decker, Quinn acknowledged grimly, dismounting and moving to stand between Nora and the mounted men. I thought you were still cooling your heels in Yuma prison. Got out early for good behavior, Decker replied with a sneer. Spent my time thinking about how I was going to make you pay for Jim's death. Marshal Blackwood urged his horse forward. That's enough, Decker. Your brother drew on Quinn in front of a dozen witnesses. It was a clean shooting. He was drunk, Decker snarled. Wasn't even armed proper. That Colt had a busted firing pin and Blackwood knew it. I didn't know any such thing, Quinn said evenly. Jim Decker threatened to gut me with his Bowie knife because I wouldn't serve him more whiskey. When he reached for his pistol, I defended myself. Nora watched the exchange with growing dread, sensing the violence simmering beneath the surface. Quinn stood tall and apparently calm, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his right hand hovered near his hip where a revolver was holstered. Miss Sullivan, Wyatt said without taking his eyes off Decker and his companions, please take Tyler and the children inside and lock the door. This time, Tyler allowed Nora to guide him into the schoolhouse. She closed the heavy wooden door and slid the bolt into place, then ushered the children away from the windows. Will Uncle Quinn be all right? Tyler asked, his young face pale with worry. Yes, Nora said with more confidence than she felt. Your father is with him, and they know how to handle men like that. Through the window, she could see the tense standoff continuing. Words were exchanged that she couldn't hear, Decker's face growing redder with each passing moment. Suddenly, he swung down from his horse, his hand dropping to his gun. Get down, Nora shouted, pulling the nearest children to the floor just as the first shots rang out. What followed was a chaotic blur of gunfire and shouting. Nora kept the children down, her body shielding the youngest ones, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. After what seemed an eternity but was likely only minutes, silence fell. Tyler was the first to rise, peering cautiously through the window. Pa's got them covered, he reported, relief evident in his voice. Uncle Quinn's standing too. Nora moved to the window. Outside, Wyatt Blackwood had Decker and one of his companions face down in the dirt, their hands bound behind them. The third man lay motionless nearby, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. Quinn was securing the horses, his movements efficient despite a bloody tear in his sleeve. Stay here, Nora instructed the children, then unlocked the door and stepped outside. Quinn looked up at the sound of the door opening, his face transforming from grim determination to relief when he saw her. In 3 long strides, he was at her side, his hands gripping her upper arms as his eyes searched her face. Are you hurt? The children. We're all fine, Nora assured him, her voice shaking slightly. But you're bleeding. Quinn glanced at his arm as if noticing the wound for the first time. It's nothing. Bullet just grazed me. Marshal Blackwood approached, pushing Decker ahead of him. Quinn, get that arm looked at. I'll handle these too, he nodded to Nora. Miss Sullivan, I apologize for the disruption to your school day. Might be best to send the children home for now. Nora nodded, still somewhat dazed by the violence that had erupted in her peaceful schoolyard. Of course. As Wyatt marched his prisoners toward the jail, Quinn turned back to Nora. I need to help Wyatt secure them, then I'll have Doc Wilcox look at this. He indicated his arm. Will you be all right? Yes, Nora said, finding her composure. I'll see to the children, then wait for you at the boarding house. Quinn hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave her. Decker's dangerous, Nora. These men came here because of me, and they used you to draw me out. I never meant to put you in danger. This wasn't your fault, Nora insisted. Go help your brother. We'll talk later. With a grim nod, Quinn followed after Wyatt, leaving Nora to gather her scattered thoughts and her frightened students. The remainder of the day passed in a haze of worry. Nora dismissed the children with notes explaining the incident to their parents, then returned to the boarding house, where Mrs. Holloway fussed over her and plied her with tea. As evening approached with no word from Quinn, Nora's anxiety grew. Finally, as the sun was setting, a knock came at the door. Mrs. Holloway answered it, and moments later Quinn entered the parlor, his arm now properly bandaged, his face haggard with exhaustion. Nora, he breathed, crossing to where she sat. He knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. I came as soon as I could. Wyatt wanted statements from everyone, and then Doc insisted on properly cleaning the wound. Is it serious? Nora asked, gently touching the bandage visible beneath his torn sleeve. No, just painful, Quinn assured her. I've had worse from the forge. His expression grew serious. Decker and his man are locked up, but this isn't over. They'll stand trial, but Decker has friends, dangerous men who might come looking for revenge. A cold dread settled in Nora's stomach. What does that mean for you? For Garrison? Quinn sighed heavily. It means I've put you all at risk by staying here. Maybe it would be better if I left, at least until things settle. Left, Nora repeated, her voice rising slightly. You can't mean that. This is your home. Your business, your family, they're all here. And I'd risk losing all of it, losing you, if it meant keeping you safe, Quinn said, his voice rough with emotion. Nora gripped his hands tightly. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for a threat that may never materialize. Garrison needs you. Tyler needs you. She hesitated, then added softly, I need you. Quinn's eyes darkened. Nora, today made something very clear to me. Life is uncertain, especially out here. I've been cautious with my feelings, careful not to move too quickly, but seeing you in danger. He took a deep breath. I don't want to waste another day without telling you that I love you, that I want to build a life with you if you'll have me. The declaration, so unexpected in the midst of the day's turmoil, left Nora momentarily speechless. Then joy flooded through her, washing away the fear and uncertainty. Quinn Blackwood, she said, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. I have no intention of letting you leave. Not now, not ever. I love you too much to let you go. Relief and happiness transformed Quinn's tired features. With gentle reverence, he cupped her face in his calloused hands and kissed her a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, whatever challenges it might hold. The following weeks were tense as Garrison awaited the circuit judge who would try Decker and his accomplice. Extra men patrolled the town at night, watching for any sign of Decker's rumored friends coming to break him out of jail. Quinn insisted on escorting Nora to and from the schoolhouse each day, his vigilance both touching and slightly frustrating to her independent nature. I can't live in fear, Quinn, she told him one evening as they sat on the porch of his small house behind the stables, where he had invited her for supper under Mrs. Holloway's watchful, chaperoning eye. Neither can you. We have to believe that justice will prevail. Quinn nodded, though the worry didn't leave his eyes. The judge should arrive within the week. Once Decker's sentenced and transferred to Yuma, things will calm down. True to Quinn's prediction, Judge Franklin arrived 5 days later, holding court in the town hall. The trial was brief but thorough, with multiple witnesses testifying to the unprovoked attack on Quinn and the marshal. Decker and his surviving companion were sentenced to 15 years in Yuma prison for attempted murder and assault on a peace officer. As the prisoners were led away to await transport, Decker turned to Quinn, his face contorted with hatred. "This ain't over, Blackwood," he spat. "Not by a long shot." Quinn met his gaze steadily. "For your sake, Decker, I hope it is. Next time I won't aim to wound." The day after the prisoner's departure, Quinn asked Nora to accompany him on a ride into the foothills. The November air was crisp, but not cold, the desert stretching around them in rugged beauty. "I want to show you something," Quinn explained as they followed a narrow trail that wound between stands of mesquite and palo verde. They crested a small rise, and Quinn reined in his horse. Below them lay a sheltered valley, a small stream cutting through its center, cottonwoods marking its course. Near the stream stood the foundation of what appeared to be a cabin, the corner posts already in place. "What is this?" Nora asked, taking in the scene. Quinn dismounted and helped her down from her horse. "My land," he said simply. 20 acres that my father claimed before he died. I've been working on the cabin when I can spare time from the forge." He led her to the partially built structure. "It's not much yet, but by spring it could be a home." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Our home, Nora, if you'll marry me." Nora looked from the cabin site to the man before her, this strong, quiet man who had rebuilt his life after tragedy and was now offering to build a new one with her. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Quinn, I'll marry you." The joy that transformed his face was like the sunrise breaking over the mountains. He lifted her off her feet in an embrace that spoke of all the happiness they had found in each other, all the promise of the years to come. They were married 2 weeks later in the small white church, with the whole town in attendance. Tyler stood proudly as his uncle's best man, while Mrs. Holloway sniffled into her handkerchief in the front pew. Marshal Wyatt Blackwood gave the bride away, his usual stern expression softened by the occasion. Nora wore a new dress of pale blue silk, ordered specially from Tucson with the first of her savings. Quinn, clean-shaven and solemn in a new black suit, watched her walk down the aisle with such naked adoration that whispers rippled through the congregation. The vows were simple but heartfelt, their voices clear and certain as they promised to love and cherish each other for all their days. When the minister pronounced them man and wife, Quinn's kiss was both tender and possessive, a promise of the night to come. The celebration continued at the town hall, with tables groaning under the weight of food contributed by every household in Garrison. There was dancing and laughter, toasts and tears, as the community that had become Nora's family celebrated their union. As twilight fell, Quinn led his bride to the waiting wagon that would take them to their temporary home above the stables until the cabin could be completed. Rose petals and good wishes showered them as they departed, Tyler running alongside the wagon for a few yards before Quinn tossed him a small leather pouch. "What was that?" Nora asked as they drove away. Quinn smiled. "The key to the forge. He's been asking to try his hand at real smithing." Figured our wedding day was as good a time as any to start his training. Nora leaned against her husband's shoulder, contentment washing over her. "He'll make you proud." "He already does," Quinn replied, his arm tightening around her waist. "Thanks to you." Their first night as husband and wife was a revelation of tenderness and passion. Quinn's hands, so strong and sure with hammer and anvil, were gentle as they explored her body. His lips, usually set in serious lines, were soft against her skin, whispering words of love and desire. In the lamplight, Nora shed the last of her girlhood insecurities, embracing the woman she had become loved, cherished and, yes, beautiful in the eyes of the man who had claimed her heart. Later, as they lay entwined beneath the quilts, Quinn traced lazy patterns on the bare skin of her shoulder. "Happy, Mrs. Blackwood?" he murmured. Nora smiled at the new name, at the weight of the simple gold band on her finger. "Completely," she assured him, pressing a kiss to his chest above his heart. "And you?" More than I ever thought possible, Quinn admitted, his voice thick with emotion. When Rebecca and our daughter died, I thought that part of my life was over. Never imagined I'd find love again, especially not with a stubborn schoolteacher from Pennsylvania. Nora propped herself up on one elbow to look into his face. I'm glad you did. Find love again, I mean. Quinn tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his touch reverent. You brought me back to life, Nora, gave me a reason to look forward instead of back. We'll look forward together, she promised, settling back into his embrace. To our cabin, to watching Tyler grow up, to filling our home with children of our own someday. Quinn's arms tightened around her at the mention of children, and Nora knew he was thinking of the daughter he had lost. I'd like that, he said softly. Very much. Throughout the winter, Quinn divided his time between the forge and the cabin, working from dawn until dusk to provide for his new wife and complete their home. Nora continued teaching, her days brightened by Tyler's newfound enthusiasm for learning and the respect she had earned from the town. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire in their rooms above the stables, Quinn working on designs for furniture while Nora prepared lessons or read aloud from one of the books she had ordered from back east. It was a simple life, but rich in the ways that mattered most. By early spring, the cabin was ready for them to move in. It was modest but solid, with 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a front porch that caught the morning sun. Quinn had crafted every piece of furniture himself, from the sturdy table where they would share meals to the wide bed that dominated their bedroom. On the day they moved in, the women of Garrison organized a housewarming, bringing dishes and linens and small decorative items to make the cabin a home. Mrs. Holloway presented them with a handmade quilt for their bed, its pattern representing the mountains that surrounded their valley. For warmth and remembrance, the older woman said, embracing Nora. I'm so proud of the woman you've become, my dear. This town is blessed to have you. As the last of the visitors departed, Quinn and Nora stood on their porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, they savored the moment of perfect contentment. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackwood, Quinn murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Nora smiled, thinking of how far she had come from that desperate young woman who had arrived in Garrison less than a year ago. Home, she repeated, the word carrying all the warmth and security she had found in this place with this man. Yes, I believe it is. Summer brought scorching heat and the end of the school term. Nora continued to tutor Tyler and a few other students who showed particular promise, while helping Quinn expand his garden near the stream. They planted corn and beans, tomatoes and squash, turning the fertile soil of their little valley into a source of sustenance. In July, as they celebrated their Independence Day with a picnic under the cottonwoods, Nora shared the news she had been savoring for weeks. Quinn, she said, taking his hand and placing it over her still flat stomach, we're going to have a baby. Quinn's expression transformed from confusion to wonder to joy in the space of a heartbeat. A baby, he repeated, his voice rough with emotion. You're certain? Nora nodded, her own eyes bright with happy tears. Dr. Wilcox confirmed it yesterday. He thinks the baby will arrive in January. Quinn gathered her into his arms, his embrace gentle as if she had suddenly become fragile. A child, he whispered against her hair. Our child. That evening, they shared the news with Tyler and Wyatt over supper at the cabin. Tyler's reaction was one of curious excitement at 14. He was old enough to understand the significance, but young enough to wonder primarily how a baby would change his own relationship with his uncle and aunt. Will I still be able to work at the forge? He asked, brow furrowed with concern. Quinn laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. Of course. You'll be like an older brother to this little one. They'll need you to show them the ropes. Tyler brightened at this perspective. I could teach them to ride and fish in the stream and all sorts of things. Exactly, Nora agreed, warmed by the boy's acceptance. And we'll need your help more than ever. As her pregnancy progressed, Nora continued to teach the summer sessions, though she found herself tiring more easily in the heat. Quinn was attentive to the point of hovering, insisting she rest in the afternoons and bringing home special treats from town to tempt her appetite when morning sickness made eating difficult. "You're going to spoil me," she protested one evening as he presented her with candied fruit he had ordered specially from Tucson. "That's the plan," Quinn replied with a rare grin. "Get used to it, Mrs. Blackwood." In September, with school resumed and her pregnancy beginning to show, Nora found herself the recipient of advice and hand-me-downs from every mother in Garrison. Women who had barely spoken to her when she first arrived now stopped by the cabin with baby clothes and remedies for swollen ankles. Mrs. Holloway appointed herself guardian of Nora's health, insisting on sending over meals when Nora taught late and checking regularly that she wasn't overexerting herself. "They care about you," Quinn observed one evening as Nora sorted through a basket of tiny garments that had appeared on their porch. "You've become part of the heart of this town." Nora looked up from a particularly delicate christening gown, her expression thoughtful. "When I came here, I was desperate for work, for a place to belong. I never imagined I would find so much more a husband, a family, a community." She placed a hand on her growing belly. "A child of our own." Quinn knelt beside her chair, covering her hand with his own. "Are you happy, Nora?" "Truly happy with this life. Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she assured him, leaning forward to kiss him softly. "Are you?" "Every day with you is a gift I never thought I'd have," Quinn said simply. "Watching you carry our child, seeing our home take shape around us, yes, I'm happy." As winter approached, bringing cooler temperatures and the promise of their child's birth, Quinn worked even longer hours at the forge, saving every penny to ensure Nora and the baby would have everything they needed. He crafted a cradle from oak, its curved lines flowing like water, every joint perfectly fitted, every surface sanded smooth as silk. "It's beautiful," Nora breathed when he brought it home, running her fingers over the intricate carvings of leaves and vines that adorned the headboard. "A work of art. Something to be passed down," Quinn said, his voice gruff with emotion. "From our child to theirs, and so on." Christmas came, the cabin decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, the air fragrant with spices from Nora's baking. They hosted Tyler and Wyatt for Christmas dinner, exchanging simple gifts and sharing stories late into the evening. As Tyler nodded off by the fire and Wyatt made his excuses to head back to town, Nora felt a sense of completion, a family forged both by blood and by choice. January brought cold winds and the first contractions. Quinn sent Tyler racing for Dr. Wilcox while he helped Nora to their bed, his face pale with worry but his hands steady as he prepared the room as the doctor had instructed. The labor was long, the hours stretching endlessly as Nora struggled to bring their child into the world. Quinn never left her side, wiping her brow, supporting her back, murmuring encouragement through each contraction. As dawn broke on the second day, Nora gathered her remaining strength for one final push. The cry that filled the room was strong and indignant, a declaration of life that brought tears to both parents' eyes. "A daughter," Dr. Wilcox announced, placing the squirming bundle in Nora's arms. "A healthy little girl." Quinn's face, haggard with exhaustion and worry, transformed with wonder as he gazed at his daughter. He reached out with trembling fingers to touch her tiny fist, and the baby instinctively grasped his finger. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Perfect like her mother." Nora looked up at her husband, seeing in his eyes all the love and joy she felt in her own heart. "What shall we name her?" Quinn considered for a moment. "Rebecca," he said softly, honoring the wife he had lost. "Elizabeth," adding Nora's mother's name, "Blackwood." "Rebecca Elizabeth," Nora repeated, looking down at the tiny face that already showed signs of Quinn's strong features combined with her own softer ones. "It's beautiful." "Like both her mothers," Quinn agreed, "and like you, my love." Nora smiled, remembering their first real conversation almost a year and a half ago. "You always say that." Because it's always true, Quinn replied, leaning down to kiss her forehead. I told you then they never looked, but I see you, Nora Blackwood. I see all of you, and you're beautiful in every way. As Rebecca dozed in her arms and Quinn stretched out beside them on the bed, his protective arm encircling them both, Nora felt the perfect rightness of their little family. From the depths of loss and loneliness, they had found each other, built a life together, and now created this new life that represented all their hopes for the future. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the desert in white, transforming the harsh landscape into something soft and magical. Inside the cabin, warmed by the fire and by love, Nora Blackwood watched her husband and daughter sleep and knew that she had found not just a home, but a place where she truly belonged. Spring came early that year, bringing wildflowers to the valley and new routines to the Blackwood household. Rebecca grew quickly, her curious eyes taking in the world around her, her tiny hands reaching for everything within grasp. Quinn fashioned a sling that allowed Nora to carry the baby against her chest while teaching, and her students delighted in the infant's presence, taking turns reading aloud to her or singing songs to make her smile. Tyler proved to be an attentive cousin, spending hours entertaining Rebecca with carved wooden toys that Quinn taught him to make. The boy had grown inches over the winter, his voice deepening, his skills at the forge improving daily. He still attended school, but now divided his time between studies and apprenticeship, his future taking shape under Quinn's guidance. One evening in late April, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rebecca asleep in her cradle beside them, Quinn took Nora's hand in his. I've been thinking, he began, his tone serious but warm. The business is doing well better than ever with the new contracts for the mine and the railroad. Tyler's becoming skilled enough to handle basic work on his own. Nora nodded, curious where this was leading. You've been working so hard. I'm proud of what you've built. Quinn squeezed her hand. What we've built, he corrected gently. And that's what I wanted to discuss. I think it's time to expand not just the forge, but our home as well. He gestured toward the stream where the cottonwoods were leafing out in pale green. I thought we might add on to the cabin. Another bedroom or two, a proper parlor for entertaining, maybe a study where you could work on lessons without Rebecca underfoot. Nora's heart swelled at the thought. For more children? She asked softly. Quinn's eyes crinkled at the corners, the smile that was still rare but increasingly frequent transforming his face. If you're willing, I always wanted a large family. So did I, Nora admitted. Growing up with siblings taught me so much about sharing and compromise. I want that for Rebecca too. Then it's settled, Quinn said, bringing her hand to his lips. I'll draw up plans tomorrow. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Quinn's arms around her and Rebecca sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby, Nora reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the desperate young woman who had arrived in Garrison with nothing but hope, to the wife, mother, and respected teacher she had become, it was a transformation as profound as the desert's own change from barren waste to blooming paradise after the rains. Quinn, she whispered, not sure if he was still awake. His voice was drowsy but attentive. Thank you for seeing me, for looking when no one else did. His arms tightened around her. I should be thanking you, he murmured against her hair. For bringing beauty and light back into my life when I thought all was darkness. In the quiet of their bedroom, with the desert night spreading its starry canopy above their cabin and the promise of tomorrow waiting just beyond the horizon, Nora Blackwood knew that she had found not just love, but the kind of love that builds and grows, that heals and transforms, that lasts beyond time and tribulation. A love born in the wild heart of the West, as enduring as the mountains and as vast as the sky above them.